Welcome to Down Ancient Trails, the online archaeology forum of the Sharma Center for Heritage Education India. Brush the dust off long forgotten thoughts. Slice through time and space.
Listen to stories in stone.
Whispers of voices lost in time.
Build bridges across worlds.
Curious minds reach out to the past. And travel down ancient trails.
Thank you very much for the next presentation. So today I will present my research on Central Europe. So as you know, I'm interested in the time period between MIS 8 and MIS 3, and as you can see during this chronology, the European territories underwent to severe climatic fluctuations. Here I have in the map, sorry, just a second. In the map, you can see here that during during the late Middle and late Pleistocene, there were the development of the ice cap that covered part of the Fennoscandia, and during the MIS 6 arrived also to cover central Germany and most of Poland. You see here there are no evidences of the ice cap development during the MIS 8 because there is still some discussions between geologists in Central Europe. But if we I will show you this evidences from Tenagi Philippon, which is a high-resolution site in Greece. And you can see here that at the beginning of the MIS 8, there is an increase of the steppic species and a decrease of what is the forester species. And so we may suggest that already during the beginning of the MIS 8, there was a development of this ice cap, but probably that these evidences were eroded or by the following extension of the glacier during the MIS 6. Okay, so this is another map showing the extension of this glacier through the cold stages of the Pleistocene. And here you can see here this is the city where I'm living, Leipzig. No? And you see that all these areas should have been very difficult for Neanderthals settling in these regions during the Pleistocene. But the difficulty was not only during the glacial period, but also during the interglacial, because if you can imagine all this huge amount of ice that started to melt, and then this will create some lakes and rivers, and all this activity is called Fluvial activity, which was common, for example, during the MIS 12 and the MIS 6. And you can see here that all this water then flow into the British Channel. Here I show you one evidence from the mountains near Dresden in Saxony in East Germany. And you can see here in the mountains, you can still find some wave-cut notches from these big lakes that were created during the melting of the MS12 glaciers. During this glacial period, we assist to also to a change on the environment. So from a forest, there is a shift toward towards steppe and tundra, and the more Arctic greening in the region closer to the glacier. And the development of this steppe and tundra environment favored the dispersal of cold adapted species from the Arctic that arrive in Central Europe. And we had the evidences of mammoth, woolly rhino, Ovibos moscatus, and the reindeer. All these animals are migratory animals that could cover really huge distances. For example, nowadays, reindeer could have a foraging radius of 400,000 square kilometers. So they could cover really a huge distance over the year. So climate change and the fauna turnover to more challenging ecological settings should have created some demographic contraction also to Neanderthal populations. And you can see here there is still a debate between scientists on how Neanderthals reacted to these glacial stages. Did they move to some temperate species, to some temperate areas, or they simply demise? There is a broad consensus that actually there were recurrent regional extinction, and then there was a following recolonization of these periglacial regions from Neanderthal groups living in more temperate habitats. And this was because Neanderthal were top carnivores, as we know from the isotopic analysis. And since carnivores are more sensible to changes in the ecosystem. So the ebb and flow movement to the refuge zones could have led to an overexploitation of the resources, and it could have provoked some kind of cascade effect on the food chain of the region. So this hypothesis is in line with the other phylogenetic analysis that point out that the southern region were the glacial refugia for the resettlement of the northern region during the periods of climatic amelioration. And here you have some example, for example, from the grasshopper, the hedgehog, and the bear. And it looks like that they move from Iberia, Italy, and the Balkans, and then they recolonize North Central Europe. Here you have another example of the Alnus tree. You can see here at around 50,000. The Alnus is present also here in north of France and in Italy. And then only during at around 26,000, with the increase of the glacier, there is a retreatment here in Italy. And then only when the glaciers start to decrease, we have the Alnus that start to spread again and to migrate to the northern regions. So since my first postdoc, I was interested in all these settlement dynamics in the late Middle Pleistocene. So I started to analyze several sites that were located near the current city of Leipzig. And as you can see from the map, is an area that was strongly affected by these climate changes. So in the last 100 years, the area near Leipzig were extensively exploited for the extraction of the brown coal in open street mines. And then you have here some example of these huge machines that were used to extract the coal. And during these quarrying activities were found a lot of archaeological sites. And since 1950s, There were rescue excavation to collect these archaeological finds before the quarrying pit were turned into recreational lakes. For example, this is the lake of Markkleeberg, for example. So the site that I will speak today, there are the early mid-Paleolithic sites were located on a riverbank, and the last glacial sites instead were located on the lake shore. So the first site I would like to introduce is Markkleeberg. So in 1999 until 2001, the Department of Archaeology of the state of Saxony decided to carry out some excavation at Markkleeberg before the quarry pit was turned into a recreational lake. So they opened 4 trenches for an area of about 340 square meters. As you can see here, the 4 trenches. The early Mid-Paleolithic site is located on eroded fluvial surface that exposed the MS-12 ground moraine, which is really rich in big and high quality flint nodules. And here you have an example of the sedimentary processes that happens in Markkleeberg from the Miocene during the Asterian and then during the MS-8. So just a quick look at the stratigraphy. So there was the this Asterian ground moraine, which is dated around 310,000 years BP. Then there was the archaeological horizons on top of this ground moraine. And then these were filled with this main terrace that was due to the fluvial activities during the MS-8, which ended around at the beginning of the MS-6, at around 150,000 years ago. So these are a picture of one of these pits that were excavated. Here you have the picture of the excavation. Several animal fauna remains were also found. This is a tusk of a mammoth. This is a tooth of a mammoth, and this is a vertebra also of a mammoth. All of these were found in different localities, and this is a piece of tree, probably from the MS-9, because this should be the archaeological horizon. So this is a table of the archaeological material. You can see there are not so many lithic items, around 642. What is interesting for us is that there is the appearance of Levallois technology, and it appeared together with the discoid and hierarchized cores. Just to give you an idea, for me, hierarchized technology is something in the middle between a discoid and Levallois. So like in Levallois, there is the hierarchization of the 2 surfaces, meaning that the upper part of the core is devoted to the production of flakes, and the lower part is devoted to preparation of the streaking platform. But then the direction of the detachment is not parallel like in Levallois, but is second the line of intersection as in discoid. These are some examples of the cores from Markkleeberg. These are the Levallois cores. And these are some examples of the hierarchized cores, unidirectional and bidirectional. These are some example of the flakes. You can see there are lots of elongated flakes due to the unidirectional exploitation of the cores. And concerning the retouched tools, they are mostly scrapers. The second site that I would like to introduce to you is Zwockau. So Zwockau was also located in a quarry, and in 1996 there were the Department of Archaeology of the state of Saxony promoted another excavation on 6 trenches for a total surface of 56 square meters. Here we have Professor Pazda, who is excavating the archaeological horizon. And again, the archaeological horizon is located above, no, laid above this Elsterian ground moraine, which is really rich in flint nodules. This is another example of the stratigraphy, and here are the archaeological horizon. I will not go in details. The interesting thing is that pollen analysis document the presence of temperate species, and since there are no dates available for the site, it is suggested that on the base of sedimentary sequence should be related to the beginning of MIS 7. Again, there are over a huge area, there are not so many lithic artifacts, but we can see here there are increasing number of Levallois flakes. There are more Levallois cores, and also together with some hierarchized cores. Here some examples of the Levallois preferential and recurrent unidirectional. And here again, we have some preferential and unidirectional core. This is the only example of Levallois centripetal at the site. So just to resume a little bit, at Markkleeberg, most of the cores were not fully exploited, but were discarded after a few napping sequences. There is a high fragmentation of the operative chains, and there is an absence of refittings. And the technological study indicates a mix of strategies with the import of configured cores, flakes, and in situ napping activities for gear retooling. In Zwockau, instead, there is the high fragmentation of operative chains, but there are also evidences of in situ preparation of the core convexity and flake production. So you can see here some evidences from refittings. So the analysis indicate that the site was used as a lithic workshop for the production of flakes intended to be transported to other locations. In my opinion, these two sites have in common that the Levallois technology is more rooted to the hierarchized unidirectional rather than to the preparation of a hand axis. Okay, so if we look to the other possibility to look at all the material, and I saw that there are many similarities between the two technology, and it looks like that they started with the hierarchized unidirectional, and then slightly they understand that the direction of the detachment was important to achieve longer flakes. From bibliographic information, so that this could be the case also for these sites, looking that maybe it's not only a specific facet of Germany, but it's something that is shared, no, between the Neanderthals in the northern latitudes. So if we look on a broader perspective, we saw that in the North Central Europe, the Levallois technology is used more in the modality preferential and unidirectional. Instead, in the southern regions, we have a higher frequencies of the centripetal pattern. Okay, so it looks like that the emergence of Levallois technology in Europe is following the two different trajectories. Unfortunately, we have really few data for the Carpathian Basin and the Eastern European plains. So it would be necessary to carry out more excavation in this area to understand what are the technological trajectories in these two areas. So I'll pass to the next site, which is called Rabuz. Rabuz was found in the 1930s in a brick quarry. It is dated to the MAS5E, dated about 120,000 years ago. There are really few bones, and they are associated with Cervocelaphus and Capreolus. The area excavated is quite big, but were found only 114 lithic items. As you can see, there are no prepared core technology, and there are only few simple cores, and there are really few Levallois flakes and byproduct. These are an example of the lithic items. And as you can see that there is a drop in size, on the dimension of the core in comparison with the early Middle Paleolithic. The pattern of exploitation continued to be unidirectional, bidirectional, or preferential. The second important site is Neumark North, which is located around 30 kilometers west of Leipzig. And the site was found in the Gesental quarry. During the quarrying activity, they were found several localities, but now we are interested in locality 2. Here there are this is a picture of the Gesental coal mining in 1825. And also during the 1933 and 66, during the mining activity, they found some archaeological material, So, and then they were excavated and were recovered. Here, you can see here, there are several bones. The last project on the site was carried out by the University of Mainz and the University of Leiden. The site was a shallow lake, as here you see in the reconstruction. The site is really rich and abundant in faunal material. Here the plot of the bones. Several carcasses were found also in anatomical connection, as you can see here. And the preservation of the bones is spectacular. Here then you have an example here of a bone with a cut mark. In this lower level, dated with MAS5E, there are were found around 8,000 lithic artifacts. As you can see, the pattern of exploitation still could be preferential, unidirectional, but then they turn to centripetal when they want to exploit fully the raw material. But you can see that the dimension of the core are smaller than in the Middle Paleolithic, and looks like Rabuz. I had the opportunity to analyze the upper level, which is the level 2.0, which is dated to the MSA. Cold adapted fauna were found at the site with the bison, equus, and ursus. The lithic material recovered about 2,000 pieces. Okay. And what is interesting is that there are a higher number of simple cores, and there are few numbers of Levallois and the prepared core technology, I would say. And then there are also a huge number of retouched tools. So these are examples of the Levallois cores. And during the MAS5A, we have the appearance of the new stone tools, which are called bifacial knives, or Kaimesser, or Mikokian biface. And this is a particular stone artifact that appeared in Central Europe by around 90,000 years ago, and is characterized by a rough back, in the opposed to a cutting edge, and this was thought to have a better handling on the artifacts during the process of butchering, or to perform during the performing of domestic activities. And here you have some examples of the bifacial tools in Neukmark Nord level 2.0. I find interesting the way how Neanderthals exploited these flint pebbles, and I identified two main strategies. So the first one is that there was the detachment of one cortical flake, and then from this flat surface they use it as platform for the exploitation of unidirectional flakes. The other strategy was to split nearly in half the pebbles, then create through the detachment another flake a semi-plane platform, and then again to start with the exploitation. These methods make me think that maybe the Levallois technology at the site was not fully performed. In fact, the Levallois byproduct are absent. There are only 4 Levallois cores and 1 single flake, and then it could be that these artifacts are morphologically similar to Levallois, but actually they were produced during another core reduction, more unidirectional, more simple. But the interesting thing is that these cortical blanks were then shaped into china and demi-china scrapers. For example, this kind of flake, cortical flake, it's really common, and it's really common that it turned out to have this morphology, this china and demi-china retouch. And also, this kind of blanks were often retouched, and then they to achieve this kind of morphology, for example. So, for summarizing, Rabbuz is interpreted as an ephemeral and probably repeated occupation separated in time. Conversely, Neukmark Nord 2.2 and 2.0 reveal an extreme redundancy in the reuse of the same area. So there should be a mixed strategy of long and short term occupations of different duration. And then the flaking activities could be mixed between an in situ napping or export of flakes and processing of gear retooling. So the other site is Königsauer, which is located north of the city of Halle. The site is also located in Ascherleben Lake that was exploited for the brown coal since the beginning of the 20th century. And Professor Mania from the University of Jena found 3 archaeological levels on the section, and he started a rescue excavation. This site is dated around 46,000 or 44,000 years ago. Königsauer is the only site in Europe where there is an interstratification between two different cultural traditions. The Kalmessergruppen, this lithic assemblage where there are evidences of Kalmesser or bifacial knives, and the Levallois Mousterian, in which are present high frequencies of Levallois byproduct, but the hand axes are mixing. These two technical traditions are interpreted differently by German researchers. Some people point out that there may be 2 different groups that were occupying Central Europe during Middle Paleolithic. Others point out that maybe they are more related with mobility and with a different task, during the seasonal exploitation of the area. So Koenigsegg is also very famous for the discovery of two beech bark pitch. One, both were dated to the beginning of the MS3. They were thought to be to glue some lithic artifacts or little bifacial knives. The fauna at the site is related with the cold adapted fauna, so reindeer, mammoth, woolly rhino, and bear. This is the tables of the lithic material. As you can see that in actually Levallois flakes are present in the three layers, so in the Keilmesser-Gruppen and the Levallois-Mousterian, and also in the Keilmesser level A, there are also 5 Levallois cores. So just going a little bit more in detail, in level A, which is the lowest and the oldest, there were found 4 main accumulation of finds. If we try to correlate the cores with the byproduct, and especially with the Levallois production, we will see actually there are more Levallois flake Levallois cores. And here there are some examples of the Levallois cores and the other cores of Koenigsegg level A. Here are other examples. Here are some examples of the Levallois flakes. And these are the table of the retouched tools. On level A, we see we have 11 Keilmesser of becked bifacial knives, and these are 2 examples of these really nice artifacts. The other some other examples. Then going to level B, there were 6 main accumulations of the archaeological finds. Here there is a huge number of cores, 153. If we try to correlate the Levallois cores with the flakes, we see here, for example, and then we use experimental mapping data. We know that using Levallois technology, we can produce between 3 and 20 Levallois flakes by core. So if we do the math, actually there are 76 Levallois flake missing. And so we can imagine that there was an export of site of the Levallois flakes. If instead we take in consideration another artifact, which is the core edge removal flakes, they were used for maintaining the convexity of the cores, and the pseudo-Levallois points that were used for maintaining the core convexity during the centripetal exploitation of the core. And we use experimental mapping data. We know that, for example, using a recurrent unidirectional, Levallois recurrent centripetal and bifacial discoid, we can obtain between 5 and 15 core edge removal flakes by core, and then between 3 and 6 pseudo-Levallois points by core. If we consider the lowest productivity rate, so by, for example, 5 flakes by core, we see that we are missing more than 200 core edge removal flakes. Instead, for the pseudo-Levallois points, the number of the experimental mapping data very similar to this of the archaeological assemblage. So we may suggest that there is an export of sites of core edge removal flakes. So here there are some examples of the course of Königsauer, level B. There are also some refittings. Here other example of a more simple course. The Levallois flakes. Retouched tools, we have mostly scrapers, but there are some bifacial tools. For example, this one, it's not a Keilmesser, but is at least is a bifacial tool, and another one which you could interpret this one. So considering level C, we saw that there are two main cluster of artifacts. We see that there are few cores, but there are some byproduct of Levallois production, which are meaning that there was an export of sites of Levallois cores. In the assemblage of level A and level C, however, there were found the flakes of byproduct of bifacial napping, and this was meaning that the bifacial tools were transported at the site and reshaped at the site, but there were no actually production of this kind of artifacts at the site. Here I have some example of the course on level C. Some flakes. For the tools, we have only two Keilmesser, and then there are more Kina and Demi-Kina scrapers. You have some examples. So for summarizing, the Ascherleben Lake was regularly set for short-term occupation, separated in time and for different foraging activities. Well, Königsauer level A and C associated with the Keilmesser group could be interpreted as an export of Levallois cores and retouched tools, and is suggested to belong to a more logistical mobility. And then Königsauer level B, instead associated with the Levallois Mousterian, we documented the export off-site of Levallois and core edge flakes, which is associated with the residential mobility. So if we try to summarize the pattern of settlement dynamics at the sites, we say that Markkleeberg it's a palimpsest of recurrent ephemeral occupations. At Zwockau, it's a napping workshop. Rabuz, again, a palimpsest of recurrent ephemeral occupations. Neumarkt Nord, it's very similar to what they call the tethered nomadism, because this redundancy in the use of the site and near this clean water area, is very similar to other evidences that we saw in the current hunter-gatherers. Königsauer level A and C is interpreted as a short-term occupation, but of logistical mobility, as we saw before. And then a level B, a Königsauer, instead is more associated with residential mobility. So we have different sites with different chronologies, but even if they are, spanning time, we saw that the main pattern of the core exploitation is always unidirectional, even if there are some time gaps, between the different sites. And this happened also in even if there is a drop in the size of the raw material. Here we have the plot between the length of and the weight of the Levallois cores, for example, and you see that there are two different, they are really separated. And we have the same pattern also for hierarchized cores, with the early Middle Paleolithic here and the late Middle Paleolithic here. So even if the late Middle Paleolithic cores were more exploited than the cores from Markkleeberg and Zwockau, we may suggest that there is also a taphonomic problem and a taphonomic explanation. So during the early Middle Paleolithic, Neanderthals used mostly the pebbles, the chert pebbles from this Asterian ground moraine. Okay, we didn't know that they were really big. And then after, during MIS 5 and MIS 3, Neanderthals were using, you know, the chert pebbles that came from the ground moraine of MIS 6, and probably they are smaller in size. So the other thing which is interesting is that there is actually, beyond the production of Kaimesa, there is a lot of stability in the territory, you know, in terms also of core exploitation, you know, with the Levallois and with the main unidirectional pattern. And this is peculiar because, for example, in France, there are some changes, no? For example, from northwestern France, which are more Levallois unidirectional, and in southwestern and southeastern France, instead, we have an increase, for example, in stage 3 and 4 and 3 of Levallois recurrent. There is an increase of discoidal production or China debitage. Assessfes Grotte in the south of Germany, in the long sequence between the MIS 5D to the late MIS 3. So here there are different things. No, there are the Mikokian, there are Kina, there are denticulated Mousterian, and there are different methods with it. And it's not only the main pattern, the unidirectional. And also at Kulna, in Moravia, dated between the MIS 5E and the MIS 3, there is a succession of Levallois. Then we have the discoid orthogonal, and then again the discoid orthogonal plus the production of bifacial knives. So the other idea is that is it the model of regional extinction valid for the Middle Paleolithic of Central Europe? Well, after the analysis of some sites near Leipzig and see the other evidences, I would say that during the early Middle Paleolithic, we have the number of the sites are too few, and it's difficult to find which glacial refugia, which area was involved in the recolonization of Central Europe. Okay. I think it is more easier to identify, for example, after the MIS 6. For example, in northern France, we have this laminar Mousterian that appear, for example, between MIS 5C and MIS 5A, and then actually they disappear after the MIS 4. And so we may suggest that there was a movement of Neanderthals from the south to the north, and then they bring what the technology that was found at the south, not with the Levallois and the discoid production. For Central Europe, the situation is a bit more complicated because there is also some kind of stability between the MS5C and the MS5-3. And the Mikokian stone tool survived the glacial stage of MS4. Moreover, we know from genetic evidences that there were some movement of Neanderthals from Central Europe to Altai, where they substituted the population from Altai around 90,000 years ago. And then they substituted the local population in Mezhmaskaya cave around 45,000. And then there is also some genetic affinities between a Neanderthal from Poland and a Mezhmaskaya 1 Neanderthal. So we know that there are these Mikokian Neanderthals showing increased mobility, probably due as a reaction of the seasonal migration of this cold-abducted fauna. But on the other hand, we are missing a lot of information in these areas. So for me, it is an open question. And now I'm starting the new project, which is funded by the German Research Foundation and the Max Planck, and we started to analyze several sites in the East European plains and dated between this MS5C to the MS5-3, and I hope to have more information maybe for the next lecture. I would like to thank the museum curators that allow me to access to the lithic material, and all the funding institution that funded my research thus far. And I would like to thank you for your attention.